you corn-placent on the conveyor belt of your life? Do you have control? Compare and contrast the corners of your discomfort as you contemplate where you are and why you are here. Do you even remember how you got here? You consume the content, contort the context, consult your computer. Are you confused? Concerned? Are contusions left on your heart from all the inconsistencies and contradictions? Do you need to be consoled? With every pro, there is a corn. For every corn up, a corn down. Maybe it all balances itself out in the end. A yin and yang conjoined at the creases, conspiring a plan. It's as simple as you make it, only as convoluted as you. Do nothing, be everything.
A census taker once tried to
Stay
test
corn.
me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
My first question, there'll be the short version and the long version, but I'll ask the long version first, which is, who are you and what do you represent?
Okay, my name is Micheal Cullinan. I was born in 1993 in Port Angeles, Washington, to my mother and father, Timothy and Valerie Cullinan. And then I grew up, and now I'm an adult. Before I was a baby, but now I'm a grown-up adult. What do I represent? Nothing. I am a collection of atoms and molecules that have assembled themselves into human form, and I am navigating my way through this universe as best I can.
Great answer. And the short version of that is 3 words to describe yourself and your personality. If you had to condense your essence into 3 words.
Flannel. Science. And music.
Nice. I was considering the word for word poems I've made with you, I was expecting some made up words right there, but okay, 3 words that are made up.
Flurmulus, narple schisms, labanatrana miffle wapple hoople noppets.
Do you have definitions for those?
Let's see. What was the first one I said? Flurmulus? Flurmulets?
Something like that.
Okay, when I think flurmulets, I'm picturing a winged insect. Narple schisms, I think, was the second one. And that's when you're having a seizure of the nipples. And I forget what the third word was.
It was very long.
But I think it's probably a rare lung disease.
Very good. What was your first instrument that you learned, and then what was your second and third? What are all the instruments you play, and what are all your musical projects that you currently have going on?
Okay, the first instrument I learned was the shaker egg, and I think I had that down pretty good by the age of maybe 3. So I'm from a pretty musical family. My parents both play music, and so I remember being a little toddler shaking those eggs, having a good old time singing, shaking, living life to the fullest, which I have continued to this day. At some point, I remember my parents took my sister and I to a concert with Arlo Guthrie, son of the famous folk singer Woody Guthrie. And he played all the instruments, fiddle, steel guitar, everything. And so I remember coming home from that. I think I was 6 years old at the time. And I told my folks, I want to be a fiddle player. And so for Christmas they got me a violin, and I took some lessons and met some hillbillies that trained me up on the old-timey ways. And yeah, from there I started picking mandolin because the strings are the same notes, so the fingering was the same. I got the hang of the pick, and then I started playing guitar when I was maybe 16. And then picked up some bass, and recently started playing the banjo. So yeah, all the bluegrass, like folk instruments, stringed instruments, mainly what I do.
Very, very cool. I'm always really impressed with violin players in particular. And you learned when you were a kid. And I feel like that's the key. Because all the people who I know who actually know how to play violin well, which you're very good at violin. I remember like sound checking, when you were sound checking with Chonk at that show we played at the Alberta Street Pub not too long ago. You were playing like some... I swear you were playing Little Glass Figurine by Andrew Bird. You might have been. But you play very well. And... I kind of have a knack for picking up an instrument and just kind of like learning it. Like I kind of did that with drums and piano and accordion and, guitar and stuff like that. Bowed instruments? No, it's just too hard. There's too much technique going on there. But yeah, what bands are you currently in? Did you answer that question? Did I space out? Because I was writing a note.
We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, what bands are you currently in?
So right now I got a really good old-time fiddle band. We play twice a month at the Moon and Sixpence, which is on like 42nd and Sandy in Portland, every second and fourth Sunday. Go, bring your mom. It's lots of fun. You can...
Name of the band?
Oh, we're called Hog Dog. HOGDOG. It's in a combination between a hog and a dog. And we just kind of sit in the corner and vibe out. And occasionally we'll play a square dance. Those are lots of fun. Everybody gets up and dances, and we just play the same tune over and over and over and over again until everyone falls over. Oh, yeah. I guess another band I'm in is Chonk. I've been playing in Chonk for like 9 years. And that's Brian Bauer's band. Chonk, I guess, is a childhood nickname of his, and he's been doing it since he was a teenager. Good songwriting, and I just kind of take sort of an interpretive approach with the fiddle in that band. So that's kind of folksy, rock and roll type stuff.
Very good. Yeah, I talked to Brian about chonk, and apparently he came up with chonk before chonk was like a word in like the urban vernacular of things. So I think it's cool that he was chonk before it was chonky. Let's see. So you're an engineer, I hear. I hear that you are an engineer. Why'd you become an engineer?
Well, I guess there's lots of engineers on my mom's side of the family. Lots of inventors and tinkerers of things, electrical and mechanical. And so I just kind of had a knack for that sort of stuff as a kid, and I like to make stuff. I don't know, I had a couple of good books when I was a kid about making cannons and trebuchets, and I loved to blow stuff up and light things on fire. And so I've always been fascinated by machinery and trying to figure out like how to make a mechanism that can do something. It's always just felt like magic, and I guess I was inspired by that from a young age. And yeah, I was always good at science and math and stuff, and so naturally I just gravitated towards engineering. And it can be kind of a square profession with a lot of, dullards, a lot of gray-eyed, soulless corporate bullshit. But I try to have fun with it. And I'm working for a really fun company right now that makes machines that roll joints for the cannabis industry. And they sort of just let me be creative and use my skills without trying to, step on my soul, which I appreciate.
Very cool. A few thoughts that came up from that. I think we should start some sort of club where we build stuff and blow things up, because I come from people who build stuff and blow things up. Like, my uncle made a giant trebuchet in which we fling exploding pumpkins, and it still exists, and I don't know why we haven't used it in years. But maybe, since you're an engineer, you should build a trebuchet that's pretty big. And which led me to my other question, which on this list, which is separate from my notes list based on what you say, I have the question, what is an engineer? Like, what exactly, like, just someone who makes stuff? Like, I mean, there's like builders, and then there's like engineers, and you just think of like smaller stuff that you put together and more math or whatever. But like, what do you need to make engineer stuff?
Okay, great question. This goes out to all you young folks out there that are curious and interested in making things. So, I was always making stuff. I liked to make flying saucers out of paper plates as a kid, and I started making lots of trebuchets and catapults and cannons and things like that. You don't need much. I think you just need a good imagination.
Do you need math? Do you need to
well,
be good at it?
You need to have the ability to solve problems. So,
Do you need to be good at algebra?
well, I think if you want to go and get a college degree in engineering, yeah, you got to be pretty good at math.
I just want an engineer stuff without getting a college degree in it.
But yeah, you don't need a college degree. So I work with some great, like, brilliant problem solvers that never went to college or anything and probably can't do algebra. But I think what we all have in common is that we have a good imagination. We like to imagine a solution to some kind of problem, and then we try to make it real. And it takes a bit of tinkering and trial and error. And so I think you have to be pretty patient with the process as well, because it's not always the fastest route to success. But with vision, like if you have a clear vision of what you want, you can get it. And it's just a matter of like finding the technology and the resources and putting them together, and not giving up when you feel like giving up, I guess that's the trick to bringing a new thing into the world. It's like giving birth in some ways.
But like, you're still speaking in all these vague terms about like believing in yourself and having a dream. But like, what what do you actually do? Like, do you need to? Because if you need to have some sort of computer software, I'm just fucked. If you have to like design something, can you just like? Can you draw it on actual paper? And then what sort of materials do you get to build the things, and how do you fit them together? And what to do an engineering thing as opposed to just a regular carpentry thing, or like a regular craft project? Why isn't a craft project engineering, for one? And for two, yeah, what tools and supplies do you need to, say, make, I don't know, a trebuchet?
Okay, for starters, you absolutely can draw it on normal paper. So I use like a 3D CAD modeling program, and it's pretty intuitive once you get the hang of it. I don't think it's all that complicated, and
Do you use any math on this program?
there's like little bits of math, like, measurements of things, and yeah, I'd say I use math maybe like 3 or 4 times a year.
But literally just like measuring something with a measuring tape, because that's not, or like with a little thing that has like a.
Oh yeah, I use a set of digital calipers, so that's a good engineering tool.
That's more like just counting rather than like actual math, though.
Yeah, sorta. But yeah, like carpentry is totally engineering. Craft projects, absolutely. If it's I guess if you're trying to make it functional in some way, like, you have to figure out how to make it work. So Yeah, right now I'm building a machine that puts joints into little cellophane bags. And so the machine needs to hold a whole bunch of joints, and then it needs to separate 7 of them and then push them into a bag. So that's an example of an engineering project. I've been working on it probably close to a year now. And it does all those things, but each little step, designing the hopper, designing the way that it separates out a specific number each time and pushes them into a bag, and it's got gears and air cylinders and a foot pedal, and I designed the whole thing to be. So one of the tools I use a lot is a laser cutting machine, and I cut out all the parts. I'll draw it up in my CAD program, and then I'll cut out all the parts, and I'll 3D print some of the things that I can't laser cut, and then I screw it all together, and it takes a lot of iteration, but eventually it works.
What can your laser cut, and what do you cut with the laser to make the parts?
So the laser cuts. I mostly work in acrylic. So acrylic is like a nice stiff plastic. So that's what I use, but it can also cut plywood and it can't cut metal. That's the next level. So the metal cutting lasers are really expensive, and we don't have one of those. But we have a guy that has one. And so when we're ready to graduate from plastic and wood and stuff to metal, we just call up our metal guy, and he does all that for us.
I just want to be completely self-sufficient. So I want to know all the tools that I need to acquire. Like, okay, would you need a laser metal guy, or could you suffice with like a welding getup? Like, could you just get the regular like welding to cut the metal, or is that not precise enough?
Well, there's lots of tools for cutting metal. So early in my career, I worked in a machine shop, and that's a lot of like huge industrial-sized tools that cut metal with like carbide cutters and everything. And it's very precise. You work in thousandths of an inch. So I guess if you're a carpenter, you maybe work in like an eighth of an inch. But in a machine shop, yeah, you try to get everything very precise because metal's expensive. And you need things to like slide and roll and move precisely. So in terms of self-sufficiency, getting access to that kind of equipment is pretty far out. But depending on what you're trying to do, like there's always a way to do it. People have figured out how to make boats out of like bamboo and,
You can find a lot of shit just lying around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And cut it up with your lasers to like fit together.
That's really what I'm doing is I've got access to these very limited tools, and I just have to make it work within that within that ecosystem, I guess. So, yeah, but I mean, people figured out how to build printing presses back when they just had like hand saws and just carved everything by hand. So there's definitely a way to do it with Stone Age technology.
Yeah, computers don't agree with me. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong when it comes to technological devices. So I'm trying to regress from technology in building shit. I've recently kind of been commissioned to build a room in a basement. And they were like, can you build this room in a basement? And I was like, yes. And I have no experience building rooms in basements. But I convinced them to let me do some like masonry with like plaster instead of plywood and like drywall. Because with like plaster, you could just like smush it on and smooth it out. And guess what? Turns out I can plaster pretty fucking well. And I haven't actually tried like doing the framing and stuff, but I like the sort of building projects where there's a little bit of room for like more shape and more like oozing into other things and not ruining the project. Which, it's probably just a matter of not being afraid of a measuring tape that will help with these things. But anyways, what is a laser exactly?
Great question.
There's a laser you can play with cats with, and there's lasers that'll kill you.
So I'm finally talking about stuff that I'm comfortable about now. A laser is light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Nerd alert.
Okay. Wait, say that again.
Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So, when you energize an atom, its electrons jump up to a higher energy level. And when the electrons fall back down from a higher energy state, they release a photon. And depending on what atom it is, that photon is like within a certain range of frequencies of light. So the laser we use at work is a CO2 laser. So it's full of carbon dioxide and a mix of other gases. I think there's some helium and nitrogen in there too.
Gas to supply the laser.
This is one kind of laser. And so, yeah, you pump it up with high voltage and the gas starts like emitting light. Sort of like a neon sign, right? Mm-hmm. And it bounces back and forth between two mirrors, and one of the mirrors allows a certain amount of light through. And so as the light is bouncing back through this tube of gas, it continues amplifying the emission of radiation, which is the light. And then eventually it's intense enough that it can cut through wood and other materials. Yeah, I don't think everybody needs a laser. Okay, for your project with building the room, something I've learned after years of trying and failing to be a good engineer is that the more sophisticated your design is, the better chances that you'll be able to make it work. So if you sit down with your pencil and paper and you draw out the framing and you figure out, how much plaster you're going to need to smush over all of the studs, or I don't actually know how plaster works, but
it's so much plaster. It's just like I could plaster anything.
Just anything could be plaster.
Plaster because it's just.
So if you get
there'll be a crangly bit and you just put plaster over it and make it smooth, but got to build the framing too and do the insulation, and it's gonna be easy. It'll be fine. It's like Legos for adults.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Legos are great because they all snap together. It's nice and easy. Building a room, I guess, yeah, you have to figure out like where the wood pieces are going to go and then how to smush the plaster over it so it like is a room. But I guess you could just take a bunch of plaster and make like an igloo out of it.
My dad has this whole like building method of just like building curvy things out of bent steel and like, planters and stuff, and then just plastering it. So everything that like I grew up with and like building is just like not square. There's not right angles. It's all just like this curvy, trippy Dr. Seuss like thing. Yeah, does it need to be square? No, not at all. In fact, it's better. I think things are better when they're not square. But how does when you put the engineering and the lasering in it with curves, I imagine that's a little more complicated when you're using that sort of technology. Oh, and also like with the laser that you have in your garage, is it easy to operate? Like all those fancy things you were talking about, that's how it works. But when you operate it, do you just press a button or something?
Okay, so for the lasers that I use for my job, I have to design a part in a program for designing stuff in, and then I convert it into a specific type of file. So say it's like a 2-dimensional part, which is what the laser does. You convert it into a vector file, basically, and then that gets translated by the laser software into a series of movements by the gantry of the laser. So the laser head moves around on a gantry, and so it follows whatever path is programmed into it, basically. So if you have a curve in there, it'll do that for you. You don't have to think about it too much. It's pretty easy to use, I think. It does take a little bit of computer tinkering occasionally, but I think all this technology is like mature enough now that most people could easily learn how to use it. You totally could learn how to do it, but you'd have to probably sit there and doink with the computer for a while to, figure it out. Yeah. If that's something you're interested in doing.
Well, I think we should probably start using your garage in your house and your space, which you got all for this whole laser project.
Yeah.
For in the first place, I think we should start building things. I'm not sure what yet.
That's the hardest part, is figuring out what to make.
But like I could come up with so many ideas if I just had like 5 minutes. Well, I had the thought of the braces, the Invisalign, 3D printing. Invisalign. How does a 3D printer work? Like, what sort of materials and what can you actually make with a 3D printer?
Okay, thank you for asking me questions that I know the answers to.
I'm really curious. I always have these conversations with people where I feel like everything is just kind of assumed, and I'm like, no, but what is that part?
So 3D printing, you're basically just squirting plastic through a tiny nozzle. And then you just it's the same deal with the laser where it's on a movement system where it can put the nozzle wherever you program it to go. And so 3D printing is kind of a miracle because all these people worked on it for free for so long. There's a huge open source community of people that are like, if I could just have this part without having to spend $1 million, I could create some great thing.
And does a computer program tell it what to do?
Yeah, so you start in the CAD program, the computer-aided drafting is what it's called, and you draw it, and you sketch it all out, and you extrude it into three-dimensional shapes, and then you sort of carve it down to be exactly what you want. And then for the 3D printers, they use a program called a slicer, where it slices that model into two-dimensional shapes, and then it prints out each layer on top of one another until you have a three-dimensional part. So the great thing about all the programs that are already made is you don't have to really do any math. They basically do it all for you. If you wanted to design a program like that from scratch, you'd have to learn a lot of math.
But could you do something like an organic shape like a tooth, for instance? Could you just import an image of a tooth and be like, do that? Or do you have to explain in some sort of computer language what a tooth is?
Yeah, basically, yes. You have to. So my workflow is sculpting the tooth, which organic shapes are really hard to make. They take a lot of sculpting essentially. And then, but once you have that, then the 3D printer just takes care of the rest for you. You can also 3D scan now, so they have lasers that'll scan a shape in 3 dimensions, and then it'll turn it into the kind of file you need. But I don't think that works very well yet. I don't know anybody that uses it.
So with organic shapes, you could do physical molds of things. Like for teeth, you could already go and get some putty and put them in your teeth, or you could do a plaster mold of your face. I did that in elementary school, and you carve it out and stuff. If you already were able to do that, could you import that into the machine, or do you have to redo it somehow?
So my computer doesn't have a slot for putting in plaster molds yet, but maybe someday.
You can't upload a photograph of
Well, the photograph doesn't.
Sculpting
Yeah.
thing. Is that a matter of artistic sculpting? But if you already had an impression of the mold in real life, would you just be taking the tiny little measurements of the mold and putting it into the thing? Or I don't know. I'm just trying to conceptualize something that I can't conceptualize.
Yeah, if I give away too many secrets, they'll come after me. No, I guess some of this stuff would be easier to show than explain. But yeah, at the root of it, you have to figure out how to draw the thing or sculpt it. And I guess so.
But not in real life sculpt.
Yeah, it's on the computer, so it's a lot of doinking with the buttons and the mouse and stuff and trying to make it work. I also hate computers.
You can't like drag and drop an image of a thing and sculpt around it.
I mean, you can do that. Yeah, there are ways to do that. The image doesn't have all the data that you need, I guess. Like, it doesn't have the depth, right? So you'd need like a few different images, I think, and then you could sort of sculpt around those. But that's a technique that people use, is they'll bring in an image and then try to draw around it.
Well, what are some of your current ideas that you're working? Like, what are you doing with your lasers that's beyond your work joint stuff?
Oh, good.
Or at least your speculation, like what your plans.
Good question. Yeah, if I had a good idea, I could be working on that. I have a few things that I'm sort of like kicking around. I have a school bus, and I was trying to design like a combustion. Sounds gross, but it's less gross than it sounds. I was trying to design a incinerator toilet for my school bus because I never really liked the sound of. So composting toilets are great, but they don't always work, and it's a delicate balance of keeping like the microcosm that devours your shit in perfect balance. So I was thinking it'd be simpler to just like nuke it with fire in a controlled chamber. And so you can buy an incinerator toilet that runs on propane, or they have the ones that use a lot of electricity to just kind of like cook it into ashes. The one I'm trying to make uses the diesel fuel that I already have a huge amount of on the bus. I don't have a lot of electricity. I don't have a propane system. I suppose I could install one. But so this is the problem, is how to incinerate my shit with a diesel-powered torch, basically. And so that was one of my projects. I was sort of like side projects that I've been tinkering with for a little while. It's been on the shelf for a few months, but I'll probably pick it up again once I realize the need. Also, there may not be a need for it. Yeah.
So a shit incinerator.
That's one of them.
And anything else?
Let me think of my more exciting projects. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's pretty exciting.
I think it could be valuable to people that live on boats, or people that want to go on, like, nomads type people where they don't have a bunch of power and they don't have a bunch of propane, and they can just use whatever fuel source they already have. Third world countries, no plumbing or running water. It would be a good solution for that. Burning fossil fuels, though, everybody's like anti-fossil fuel burning right now, so it's a little bit non-woke. But I have some other ideas. Let me think. Oh yeah, I want to build sort of like a mute, like an adjustable mute for my banjo. So I've got this banjo that's really loud, and it would be cool if there's like a button on it that you could push, like a lever that would quiet it down. So I was trying to think of a way that I could have a lever mechanism that would push up on the bridge from behind the banjo head. Maybe it has like some little clicks in it, so like you push it down one click and it gives you a certain volume reduction. 2 clicks, it gives you some more. So that's one thing I was messing around with. Yeah, I don't know. I keep a list of ideas, and I'll look through it once in a while, or when I have a good idea, I'll add it to the list. And some of them are worth more than others. Most of them are just ideas. The hard part is actually making it.
But that's just time, right? Is it a matter of time, or is it actually difficult?
It's time, difficulty, resources, money, materials, sitting there and solving every little problem, like how big does this thing need to be? How long does this lever need to be? How does the lever engage? Like, I need to have some kind of a pivot point on this lever. Where should that be? So getting the geometry and the mechanics all working together. Anyway, yeah, it's a lot of just like headaches.
Sounds like you need to work less at your actual job so you can make your cooler stuff. But I don't know. If you have tools to make cool things, I'm going to probably come up with a bunch of ideas and then just show up uninvited at your house and be like, we're going to make this today and you're going to show me how because I don't really know how to do it. And then you'll show me how to work your your lasers, and I'll bring some like junk I find off the street and we'll cut it into pieces. And something might happen.
I think that's a great idea. You're welcome to tell me or show up uninvited with your ideas anytime. Okay. And we'll give birth to this new creation that the world desperately needs.
We could start with a trebuchet for one.
Yeah, I've got lots of trebuchet building experience. I know exactly what to do. So I think that's a good first project for us. Should we be launching basketballs, watermelons, cantaloupes? What would you like to launch from the trebuchet?
All of these things seem like good options to me. Maybe we should make a giant trebuchet. In a city, it's a bit difficult. You have a truck, though, so we could bring it out to the country. We need someone whose land they're willing to let us fling things. We should also make a series of miniature trebuchets. Yes. So I had this idea the other day while I was driving on the freeway and really pissed off at someone behind me who was tailing me when I was already like going like 20 over the speed limit, and he's just like riding my ass. And I just had this idea of like non-violent neutralizing of the situation via water balloons filled with paint to the windshield. So they're not bullets. Yeah. They're not. It's not. It just makes them have to pull over. Like, but if your windshield's covered in paint suddenly, so like if we make a bunch of miniature trebuchets that we could like bring up through a sunroof in a high-speed chase sort of situation to trebuchet paint-filled water balloons at someone's windshield, I think that would be a good project.
Yeah, this is great. I love the paint balloon launching trebuchet. Trebuchets are cool because they're mechanical and they move around in an elegant way. A simpler idea might be a paint squirt gun.
I thought about that too, but since we were talking about trebuchets, I just imagined that. And I also feel like there's got to be like a bunch of miniature trebuchets. There's got to be something cool we could do with like 17 tiny trebuchets.
Yeah, maybe like a paint balloon army.
Something like that.
We could take out everyone on the highway.
Or just passerbys, like anyone who...
So on the other scale of this is a giant trebuchet that you tow behind your truck, and if somebody's getting too close, it loads their car into the trebuchet, and then you hurl them, a mile.
That would, considering how large the trebuchet is that I'm familiar with, that was only launching pumpkins, I imagine a car launching trebuchet would have to be pretty huge. Maybe too huge.
So I don't think anybody would tailgate the car launching trebuchet. So in that respect, it works.
Too huge to tow, though, is the thing.
Oh yeah, we need a semi truck or maybe a fleet of them. Yeah.
Anyway, do you eat your vegetables?
I try to eat the occasional vegetable. I'm not anti-vegetable. In fact, I enjoy eating them, though I do prefer to eat less healthy foods.
What kind of vegetables do you eat?
Well, the leafy greens, those are definitely... So we live in a complicated time where everything that we thought was a vegetable turned out to be a fruit. I learned this recently.
This is true.
Basically, all of the fruity looking vegetables are actually fruits, which was devastating to me because I thought that I was eating my vegetables when in reality I was just eating ordinary fruit.
I mean, it kind of counts as the same
So,
in some regards.
so really, the only vegetables are like parts of the plant that aren't the fruit, like the leaves and the stems. So you could make a nice salad out of leaves and stems. That would be a vegetable experience.
Root vegetables. How do you feel about carrots and beets?
So I don't know if all the science is in on the root vegetables yet, but I do enjoy the root vegetables, especially roasted in the oven. With a little bit of olive oil, some salt and pepper. Makes them real tasty good like.
Regardless of whether they're technically a vegetable, I do know that beets are very good for you and count as far as eating the vegetables. So yeah, I just wanted to, do a regular encouraging of eating vegetables to anyone who might be listening. Gotta eat your vegetables. Eat beets. Make it seem like you're shitting blood every once in a while when you're not really doing that.
That would be a huge relief.
Yeah, just eat beets. And then you get to experience the relief you feel after the terror of thinking that you're shitting blood, and then remembering that you ate beets, and then that relief is like a tangible feeling.
Yeah, that's like the good kind of shit blood. From when you made a healthy choice. So more on vegetables. In my line of work, I work with a lot of men that refuse to eat their vegetables. One of them in particular won't touch them. He only eats like fried foods, meat, and things like that.
He's gonna die.
He might. He seems pretty healthy for now, which is astonishing. But I try to be the voice of reason, saying, have a vegetable once in a while. Decide to eat a salad. Feel better for a day. And then you can carry on with your onion rings.
I mean, onions are vegetables, but I don't know if they count if, they're deep fried.
Vegetable again?
Well, an onion's gotta be a vegetable.
I'm not a vegetable scientist. I'll never know.
Well, I think everything that's like seed bearing, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck a vegetable is anymore, really.
What the hell is an onion?
There's lots of layers to this question, but so we've had a few conversations about domain ownership ideas.
Oh, yeah.
One I got really excited about one night, and I sent it to my dad, and then he sent one back that was like, everywhere I've been and everything, like exactly what I'm doing at alltimes.com.
Wow.
That like you could, he was better than that. That was a stupid iteration of it. But let's see if we came up with some. There's like, stinkgirl.com. What are some other domain names that we should probably buy that might be available?
So, for a while I owned boobfarts.com.
But you don't anymore.
I let it lapse, unfortunately. It might be available again. Though now that they know that somebody did want it at one point, I'm sure they jacked up the price.
Yeah.
It's nice to just find the lesser sought after domain names and try to get them. So I thought boob farts was going to be good. So the whole idea spawned. I was in a hot tub with some friends, and one of my friends who had boobs, they made a fart sound, which was amusing, and we all laughed about it. And then so somebody said, well, I think it was me. I said, boobfarts.com is my third favorite website. And so when I eventually made it out of the hot tub and sobered up a little bit, I got on the computer and I started searching around for boobfarts.com. Sure enough, no one had claimed it, which to me seemed insane because these are two things that appeal to 99% of the population. Boobs, farts. So you put them together, and you have the makings of probably a multi-billion-dollar franchise.
And what would the website consist of? Would it just be a bunch of videos of boob farts?
That's one option. Somebody suggested maybe a more tasteful version, which would just be recordings of boob farts. Mm-hmm. And then I got to thinking, like, are there going to be enough? It's kind of hard to make a natural boob fart. You need the right amount of, like, lubrication to sort of trap the air between the boobs. So I was trying to figure out a way to create, this is another engineering problem, how to create a consistent, repeatable boob fart. And so what I was thinking of doing is getting an air compressor and squirting compressed air in between boobs to try to get a fart noise. But you might need also some water in there to sort of like get it to stick a little bit so that you get like a nice oscillating air bubble between boobs.
With my experience with boob farts, it's a matter of like the space between the boobs, the right amount of moisture, and rather than air compressed air, it's like trapping air and creating suction in some sort of way. But I'm not sure how this hot tub boob fart came to be. But the boob farts I've experienced involve a degree of pressure and then pulling apart, creating a suction sort of boob fart situation.
Yeah, so if this were to be an engineering project, I think what we would want to do is put together a variable matrix. So say, like air pressure, boob wetness, and then you could have other deliverables like frequency, so like how high pitched the boob fart is. And you'd put together sort of a test matrix to figure out like what the knobs are. So like if you turn up the air pressure, there's a chance that the boobs will just fly apart and you won't hear a fart noise at all. But if you get the pressure just right and you get like the viscosity of whatever fluid is causing the air to get trapped in there, size of the boobs is definitely a factor here. I think larger boobs would make a lower pitched fart. Anyway, there's a lot of science that hasn't been done yet. I'm looking for funding to start this project up again. Yeah, I'll need lots of willing volunteers.
So another domain idea, which I looked up on the domain claim website. Stink Buddy or Fart Buddy, one of those two. I think Fart Buddy is not taken. In which case, it would be a social media platform where you just log on to see whoever else is logged on. And if they're logged on, it means that they need to fart. So you pick a buddy and you fart with them.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that website where you like get matched with a random person video chatting? What was that one called?
I just recently learned of this and I've never been on it.
Omegle or something? Yeah.
Okay.
I remember having lots of fun with Omegle as a kid. It just like links you to somebody else and you just video chat with a random person in the world. It would be specific to that for if you have to fart, you quickly log on to this app and then you exchange farts with a stranger from across the world.
Yeah. And also maybe to like, upgrade, like say you have like a whole profile or something. If you were going to make it more social media like with where you have a profile, if it wasn't just like Omegle, where you just find your fart buddy and fart and get it done with, you could have like a collection of recorded farts on your profile. And like a fart log, stuff like that, stuff like that.
Yeah, these are great ideas. Let me think. So, I guess maybe you could have like a user rating, like so if the other person can rate your fart out of 5 stars or something. So, and then you'd have like a higher status, and maybe you'd get more matches on Fart Buddy. or something.
More opportunity to fart
Yeah,
with more people.
maybe you could swipe right or left on a fart.
Do you think you get to see what the person looks like, or do you just get to hear their fart? Are you just rating them? It should probably be you're just rating them off of their fart, so you're not biased by what they look like.
I think that would be a good pure way to do it. I think for maximum user engagement, there should be some butt.
Okay.
Yeah, there should be a butt element. It doesn't have to include the person's face.
So, like, the profile picture would just be, like, a butt.
Yeah. So the shapelier butts, would probably get more attention. But if the farts weren't holding up, then you'd have to switch, you'd have to search around a little more.
Yeah, I also bet there could be some, I'm just thinking there might be a gender sort of bias with the farts here. But I bet with the right angle there and like the right, hair removal activities, there could be a lot of men who convincingly make their ass look like a woman's ass just so they get higher ratings on Fart Buddy.
Yeah, this is starting to sound like fart porn. I've never watched fart porn, but somebody who watched it told me about it, and they said it was hilarious. So I encourage all of you listeners to Google some fart porn tonight and report back in the comments and let us know how we can improve our app. Well, I drank all my whiskey, and I ran out of wine. Smoked all of my reefer, just trying to have a good time. And nobody knows from their head to their toes just how slowly that brown river flows. I got the brown river blues. Why is that river so brown? I got the brown river blues up and down Monroe. Not much to talk about and nowhere to go. 'Cause I lost my license. Somebody stole my bike. And the bus quit running after the transit strike. And nobody knew from their hat to their shoe just what to do to turn that brown river blue. I got the brown river blues. Why is that river so brown? I mean, I got the brown river blues. Why is that river so brown? Somebody tell me now. I got the brown river blues. Get me out of this town.
My coochie don't wanna clean his benzodiazepine. It's a minimum density control to fit inside of any hole. Tell me, have you ever tried to fit a sea cucumber inside a buttonhole inside your jacket and pull it through the other side? I promise I'm not trying to tease him, it's just really ain't that easy. And if he wants me to please him, take his bone out for a ride. Maybe he should try to chill on those happy freedom pills he keeps perched all pretty like, sitting on his windowsill. He's asking me where I've been, about all the ass since inside my jeans, but my coochie just can't clean his benzodiazepines. Fish can't swim into a net that's really too small to catch, especially if that net is really built to stretch. An earthworm should have other goals and steer clear of these higher holes, clearly built for other things outside of his earthwormly roles. Maybe desire would surge if Mr. Worm became more turgid, but Worm remains only in space of on the verge. There's many other metaphors convey without being too mean, but my coochie just can't clean his benzodiazepines. Good enough.
Someday you'll find the end of my rainbow, and maybe there will be a little pot of gold. Someday while running around, you'll find what I never found, a golden mist, a rainbow's kiss, all falls down in a little pot of gold. Someday those silver clouds will be lifting, the ones that cover up my gold. Now that I am feeling blue, there's nothing I can do but chase those little rainbows in my soul. Sing it again. Someday you'll find the end of my rainbow, and maybe there'll be a little pot of gold. Someday while running around, you'll find what I never found, a golden mist, a rainbow's kiss, all falls down in a little pot of gold. Someday those silver clouds will be lifting, the ones that cover up my gold. Now that I am feeling blue, there's nothing I can do but chase those little rainbows in my soul.
I don't have to do.